Hi, I'm Jennifer French, the MPP for Oshawa. I wanted to share a few thoughts because this is National Indigenous History Month, and I know that across communities we are all grieving and reeling since the horrifying discovery of 215 bodies of children of former students at a residential school in Kamloops, BC. I wanted to extend my condolences to Indigenous community members and extend a recognition of this trauma that has been intergenerational, because while people across the broader community are shocked and maybe are learning about residential schools for the first time, this is not shocking nor a surprise for Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit and Métis community members across the country. For generations, they have known that their children did not come home. Families have long known that they had their babies, their children taken from them and sent to residential schools, taken and sent there by the government and the churches, and that they did not come home, that those children had their lives cut short, their stories ended, and they never had closure, they never had answers, and they certainly never had their children back. Residential schools in the Indian Act, Sixties scoop, happened a long time ago, but they are not in our past. They continue to shape families and futures. They continue to harm residential schools. Are crime against humanity. We're talking about, an attempt at genocide, an attempt to erase and destroy Indigenous communities, and fortunately, they have not been erased. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission did remarkable work to connect with survivors, to tell their stories, to collect an understanding, and to shape recommendations that unfortunately have yet to be followed through on. So federally and provincially, we all have a responsibility. We are all treaty people. Many folks across Ontario and Canada don't understand what that means. Part of that is because residential schools, treaties have not been taught. And unfortunately, the first order of business since the last election was that, this government cut funding to the Indigenous Culture Fund, Indigenous curriculum writing, and as per the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations, that curriculum needs to be developed and taught. That funding needs to be restored. Those programs need to be resumed. We all need to stand in solidarity with First Nations and Indigenous communities, and as they continue to struggle for human rights and justice. We cannot pretend that this is a dark time in Canada's history without recognizing that we continue to do harm in our current day and headed into the future. In the province of Ontario, there are children whose whole lives have been spent under the cloud of a boiled water advisory. There are communities that have never had clean drinking water, that have substandard and unsafe housing. If we allow that to continue, we are staring in the face of structural racism. These are systems and structures that have been put into place and are now being allowed to continue. Rather than playing jurisdictional ping pong about whose responsibility it is all of our responsibility. We are all treaty people. My colleagues Saul Mamakwa and Suze Morrison spoke eloquently at Queen's Park. I won't repeat their words. I could not say it as powerfully or eloquently as they have, but please check out their remarks. But recognize that they and all of us are calling on the federal government, the provincial government to step up and to be honest partners with First Nations and Indigenous communities. At residential school properties across this country, those properties need to be searched. We will find terrible stories. We will find lives cut short. We will find the bodies of children who were stolen and who were lost to their families and to their futures, who never got to grow and become grandparents. But we will find their bodies, and by we, I mean that all of us need to follow the lead of Indigenous communities who who need to take the lead, and we will follow as actual partners in true and meaningful reconciliation. And I think all of us have a challenging road ahead of us to ensure that we do have that understanding, to understand the truth, as challenging as it might be, and all of us to come together and support that true and meaningful reconciliation. Each child matters. Indigenous communities deserve clear and bright futures, and any role that we can play in supporting that and in working with them to ensure that all children and all families have a safe and clear, hopeful path forward. We all have that responsibility. Thank you.